Well, Jerry, thanks for taking time to hang with us today. It's great to be with you.
It's lovely to be here, David. Thank you for having
Yeah,
me.
of course. I want to go back in time for people who don't necessarily know your story, and I've heard it several times. It's quite profound. Kind of what was happening in your life at the time that you experienced an awakening? So, not just the awakening part, but describe your life, and then how did the awakening unfold?
Yeah, so around that time of my life, it was kind of chaotic. Me and my friends, we had a business in London, a property business, and we were making a lot of money, and it was going really well. And then we were very young. I mean, I think I was like 26 or something at the time, and we didn't foresee some potential issues, and we sort of just motored along and trucked ahead. And the property market took a bit of a shift. I think it was 2003, 2004, and we created this kind of piece of structured finance that enabled us to fulfill obligations for contracts that we'd enter into with clients. And basically, it all went belly up, and the clients lost everything. We lost everything. It was a crazy time. I mean, we had lots of money, all these different material objects, houses, cars, all this stuff, and everything just went. And I remember we were out on the street, me, my ex-wife, children, and I ended up going back to selling drugs. And we moved into this rented accommodation, and I wasn't into anything spiritual, anything to do with the universe, God, infinite intelligence. I thought it was all for crazy people. And then one day, I'm sat there watching TV, and my ex-wife comes in and she says, "Jerry, every time I close my eyes, I see all these dark images and hear all these dark voices, and it's like something's trying to take me away." And she said, "When I'm pushing the pushchair down the road in the morning, something's trying to make me push the pushchair into the road and push the kids in front of the cars." And I was listening to her thinking, this sounds nuts. This sounds crazy. But I was like, okay, what do you want to do about it? So she called her friend. Her friend was a priest. So this priest came around the house. She's putting up crosses, dousing the house and all this energetic stuff. And I'm sat there thinking, this is like something out of the poltergeist. This is nuts, you know? And anyway, she calms Laura down. Laura goes to bed. The next day I wake up and I phoned my friend. I said, "Listen, man, this crazy thing happened in our house last night with Laura. Uh, I need to talk to you about it." So I told him what happened, and he said, "Listen, you need to call this lady." So he gives me the name and a number of this lady. He didn't tell me anything about her. He just said, "Call her. She's going to know what to do." So I phoned this number. Nobody answered. I left a message. She calls me back a little bit later. She says, "What's going on?" So I told her, and she asked me where I lived, and I said 316 Richmond Road. That's the only bit of the address I gave her. It could have been anywhere. She goes, "Hold on a minute," and the phone goes quiet, and she says, "You've been knocking some walls down in your house." I said, "No, well, we rent the place." I said, "We've just moved in." I said, "But the previous owner has clearly built an extension." She said, "Yeah, you've got an angry old man in your house." I said, "An angry old man?" I said, "Well, okay, let's say there is an angry old man," because I didn't know anything about this stuff. She goes, I said, "What are we going to do about it?" She goes, "Well, I'll get rid of him for you." I said, "Brilliant. When can you come round?" She goes, "Oh, I can do it from here." So I'm thinking this is just getting weirder and weirder. Anyway, we chat for a little bit longer, part company on the telephone. And I go home and I say to Laura, "Listen, I know I didn't tell you, but I end up speaking to this lady about what happened last night. And she reckons there's an angry old man in the house." And Laura turns around to me and says, "Yeah, I know, Jerry, I've seen him." So I'm thinking, okay, you've seen him. This lady up the road who lives like, at least a 3-hour car ride away. She's seen him. You've never spoken. You've got no common friends. There must be like some kind of thread of truth to this. So I phoned the lady back up and I said, "Listen, I don't know what you do, but I'm coming to see you." I said, "I need to see you. I need to investigate this stuff more." So that happened. And I ended up going and meeting this lady. She had a past life regression business, and she worked for Scotland Yard in the psychic division. Now, around the same time as I met this lady, and we had this kind of encounter with this angry old man. I was in Romania again with Laura and the children, and we were in a car crash. I think the car crash was just before or just after the encounter with the angry old man. I can't remember exactly, but we're in Romania. I'm asleep in a taxi, and Laura and the kids are in the back, and I hear this loud crash. I wake up, the car's swaying from side to side. There's glass, there's wind. I'm thinking to myself, man, we're in a bad accident. We're either going to hit the oncoming traffic or the car's going to flip over. And then all of a sudden we come to a stop and there's no other cars on the road. I look at the taxi driver. He looks petrified. Alea, our daughter's underneath the driver's seat. Laura's got Josh in her arms in the back. Both their mouths are full of glass. There's a hole in the windscreen in front of me and there's blood dripping down my face, but I'm not bleeding. So I'm thinking this is a weird situation. So I get out of the car. I check on Laura and the kids. They're okay. I look about 30 meters back up the road and there's two ladies lying on the side of the road. One of them has got her ankles cut clean off and the other one's physically okay. Both of them are screaming. I look about another 150 meters up the road and there's what looks like a dead body. And so I walk past the two ladies. There's a guy that's come out from a nearby factory and I think he must be on the phone to the emergency services. There's nothing I can really do, you know? So I carry on walking. I'm fixated on what looks like a dead body. I get closer and closer, get within about 10 meters, and I see this energy hovering above the body, which was the lady's soul. At the time, I didn't really know what it was, but I'm shaking my head and I'm sort of like, I want to see it. I don't want to see it. I'm trying to get rid of it. I get closer and closer. This soul just fizzles off, this energy into the ether and disappears. By this time, I'm looking down over the lady's body. Her legs are wrapped up over her head. She's completely smashed to pieces. And I remember looking up to the heavens or wherever I was looking to and just saying, thank you. And I don't drink whiskey and I don't smoke cigarettes, but I wanted a whiskey. I wanted a whiskey and a cigarette. It felt like a time to celebrate. Like whatever was inside this body had just gone on its merry way. It was like someone had taken an old car to the scrap heap. There was no use for this physical vessel anymore. And this energy had just gone. And I saw, I had this kind of like experience, like there's obviously something in the body that isn't the body. There's something beyond the physical form. And I witnessed like this kind of like separation after death. And I realized that whatever was in the body, it didn't die. It just went somewhere else. Wherever it went, I don't know. Well, I do now, but I didn't at the time. And so I had this experience. And it was like the universe was smacking me around the face and saying, come on, Jerry, wake up. We're so much more than these physical vessels. We're atoms, we're molecules in continuous movement, we're space. And so, this was just a massive wake-up call. This coupled with the angry old man meeting this lady who taught me how to remote view, bring my light out of my body and travel, all of these different kind of multidimensional abilities, So I had this kind of I was in this kind of crazy, chaotic time. And it was like the universe was stripping everything away from me. For the next sort of probably 7 or 8 years, I was still making money illegally. Drug smuggling, gun running, bank fraud, all of this stuff. And I was going on this spiritual journey and I kept getting sucked back into the easy money and the fast lifestyle. And it took a while for me to break free from that. So it was like a chaotic time in my life where I was stripped back to nothing. And I had to kind of submit and surrender and let everything go from that old lifestyle before I could fully go into this new one. And it was kind of a process. Yeah, not an easy one, but one that I would never, ever change because I learned so much through it.
Mm-hmm. Can you remember back to the last, let's just say, illegal transaction that you participated in? And what made it the last one? What made it like, okay, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to focus on this other direction.
So what was happening in my life was we were making a lot of money illegally. I'd gone back to this old lifestyle and we were stealing a lot of money from banks. And every day we would have just big bags of cash, 100 grand, 300 grand, whatever it was. We were making millions. And we didn't need it all. And I was shifting on the inside. And so I went to see somebody and I said, listen, I've got this money. What could we do with it that is good for humanity? And so we ended up through someone that I knew that knew somebody. We ended up giving money to these charities in Africa, and we started building water pipelines, schools, permaculture projects, all these different things. And all these letters were coming back, and they were saying, "Listen, thank you for the money. This is what we've done. We've blah, blah, blah." And it started to change me. I started to realize that actually giving, instead of just spending money on, Gucci suits and Rolex watches and Lamborghinis and all that bullshit that I never really needed, we could actually do good stuff with this money. So it started changing me on the inside. And we were still stealing the money from the banks, and we were still keeping some for ourselves. And we were giving, a bundle of this money to charities and stuff. And what happened is, I moved to New Zealand in 2008, or the end of 2008, beginning of 2009. The reason we moved there is because we were quite green on this spiritual journey, and we found a company called the Matrix Institute, and they had these future maps of the world, and they were saying there were going to be these cataclysms, and Europe was going to go underwater, New Zealand was going to quadruple in size. So we ended up moving to New Zealand because we thought there was this crazy flood was going to happen. So we went to New Zealand, set up a mixed martial arts gym, a strength and conditioning facility, and started helping people through fitness. And because I moved to New Zealand, that was the last time that I was involved in any of that other stuff, because going over there was a whole new different kind of marketplace for me. I didn't really know anybody. It was like a fresh start, So I left all that kind of stuff behind. Part of me wonders how long I'd have really kind of stuck to it for, if I hadn't gone over. But we moved to New Zealand, and we ended up moving back in 2012, end of 2012, beginning of 2013. And I got arrested when I moved back for something that had happened back in 2007. And I was looking at a long prison sentence. And during that time, I was on bail for 2 years. I was learning more about energy healing, speaking to extraterrestrials, having all of these kind of experiences. But I had this kind of court case hanging over me. And all of the time, my old friends had come back into my life because I'd moved back to England, and I did a few things. I got involved in a few deals here and there because it was quick money. And yeah, I did it. I succumbed to the pressure. And then as I went through this court case, I think I went to court in 2015, and I was looking at a long prison sentence, and I said to the universe, "Listen, if you get me off this court case, I promise you I'm going to go full throttle into this healing stuff and leave everything else behind." And so when I went to court, I was stood in this bulletproof dock, and the prosecution gave their side of the story. Well, actually, before that, what happened is the judge walked out with his two accomplices. It was a male and two females. And the lady to my left, to his right, she had wings on her back, like an angel. I could see them. And she winked at me. And I was like, no way. Like on the inside, I was thinking, I'm going to get off this. But my conscious mind was like, nah, no chance. Then the prosecution came out. They gave their side of the story, made me out to look really bad. They brought up stuff from when I was a kid. Anyway, between that time of coming back from New Zealand and going to court, I'd actually been to the Philippines with my daughter. The Typhoon Haiyan had happened. There was a massive, massive, crazy tsunami. And so we took a team over there, and we rebuilt villages. We put more permaculture projects in place. We visited 3 kind of towns that had been smashed. We did so much humanitarian work in a 3-week period. And the people from there, the government had written a letter, and I'd given that to the court, to the judge as well. And there were some other humanitarian things we'd done, like the stuff in Africa and blah, blah, blah. And they went out and they deliberated. They came back in 40 minutes later, and they said, "Listen, we can see you're a changed man, Mr. Sargeant. We're going to give you a 1-year conditional discharge and an £80 court fee. You're free to go." So I went to walk out, and the police officer walked up to me, and she said, "You should have gone down for a long time today, Jerry." And I just smiled and said, "I know, but I didn't." And it was at that point that I knew that was it, star magic. There was no turning back then. So literally 2016, March, which was, say, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months after this court case, we started Star Magic, and we've not looked back. We're going into our 9th year now.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that amazing journey. Um, What are some moments along this journey where you could point to where you said, this was a breakthrough in my thought process, my intuition, my skills, my abilities? Like, what are some moments over the last, 10 years where you talked about the one where you met the woman who obviously saw into your home? That was a breakthrough moment. What are some other breakthrough moments that you say, I can point back to that and something changed?
I mean, every day of my life, there's breakthrough moments because I don't take any of this stuff for granted. And we've trained now like thousands of people in like 72 countries. So there's lots of people out there in the world that are using star magic in their healing businesses. And they've started new businesses or expanded their own business. So the amount of emails that we get back from all of these facilitators around the world, all of the amazing things that have happened to their clients, the healings they facilitated, they blow me away every day. You know, I remember when we very, very first started Star Magic, what happened is I went to this Mind Body Spirit Festival because I was like, if I come out and say to people, listen, I'm doing all of this kind of healing stuff, people are going to think I'm crazy. So I went to this healing, like a mind body spirit festival, and I took my first book into the light. I went with my daughter Alea, and I just made these kind of little like business cards and these little like flyers that just said energy healing, and they were crap. They were like black and all these horrible colors, but it was just a quick thing. So and I created like a Google Doc and an Excel spreadsheet and just said to people, listen, put your name down. I'm giving away 3 free healings at the end of the weekend. So 70 or 80 people put their name down, and I phoned them all on the Monday morning and said, you've won, just so I could practice. So I had like 70 or 80 people. So I worked on them all over the next few weeks and got some amazing results. And I phoned them all back up and said, listen, you know, what happened in the healing session was awesome. I said, I'm coming to your house this week to have a cup of tea with you, and I'm bringing in my video camera so you can give me a testimonial. And most of them, they agreed to it. So I spent like a week or two just driving all around the country getting these testimonials, because I thought if I've got testimonials, you know, I've got some social proof and people are going to believe me. Because if I just come out and just tell people I'm doing this stuff, they're going to think, nah, this is rubbish, this is nuts, blah blah blah. So it built my confidence. And so, but these healings that I was facilitating, like, you know, body parts were kind of mending, like shoulders, backs, like just kind of like normal things. I never really healed anything kind of like major. Anyway, so we put the first website up, and that Christmas, it was Boxing Day, a guy got in contact with me, and he just got out of hospital, and he had diverticulitis, he had E. coli, he had 3 tumors in his belly, and something else going on with some other blood condition. And he was in hospital, and the doctors had said to him, listen, if you make it through the next 24 hours, we're going to have to cut 10 feet of your intestine out and fit a colostomy bag so you can go to the toilet for the rest of your life. So anyway, they pumped him full of drugs. He made it through the next 24 hours. They sent him home, and they booked him in for the beginning of February to have this major operation. So he got in contact with me at the end of the year, and he said, could you do a healing on me? He found me on YouTube. And I said, yeah, of course I can. So anyway, he was in Birmingham and I was in Cheltenham, which is where I lived at the time, where I was born, which is probably about 40 miles in, you know, as the crow flies, about an hour drive. And he was at home. I was at my house. I went in, I did this remote healing session on him. You can go to the website and kind of check this out. But in his words, he said he was lying in his bed, and 2 big shafts of light came down by the side of him, and a unicorn came and kissed him on his nose. And then he kind of came around, and he was in this kind of on this kind of like healing bed in Egypt, and there was all like a stone roof. And I was there. I witnessed the same thing. I take people underneath the pyramids into these healing chambers, and all of these beings come out. They're psychic surgeons. They've got crystal healing rods. They cut people's bodies open. They remove tumors, all of this sort of stuff. So anyway, he's lying on this stone healing bed, like holographically, and there's all of these surgeons around him. In his story, he says, Jerry put his hand in my body where the tumors were, where the major pain was, and he pulled them out. What I witnessed were these beings cut his belly open and remove the tumors. And then they did something to his body and just recoded him and took all of the blood conditions out, the E. coli, the peritonitis, the diverticulitis. That was it. All of that stuff. And then they brought him holographically back to his bed. When he woke up, he had a physical scar across his belly. And he took a picture of it to show me. And he phoned me up and he was crying. And I was like, this is crazy. You know, like it blew me away. The other thing was this guy was an ex-jockey and he'd had a really bad back from falling off some horses. And during the healing session, his back got mended too, even though I wasn't aware of his back being mended. And he didn't tell me that there was anything wrong with his back because it wasn't really a major issue compared to what was going on. But anyway, his back got mended too. He goes back to the doctors a couple of weeks later for a checkup. And the doctor said, I don't know what you've been doing, but you've got no tumors in your belly anymore. They did scans. There's no E. coli, no diverticulitis, no peritonitis. And everything was clear. He said, I don't know what we're going to tell the surgeons, but you don't need to have an operation anymore. So everything was kind of healed. And I was just blown away by this. Like, you know, if you go to the website, you can see all the medical evidence before, after his story, the scar. And so this was a massive, massive kind of, I don't know whether you'd call it a turning point or an elevation point or an upgrade point, but it gave me so much confidence and it truly helped me understand what is possible in the field. And so like what we see and what we know and what we imagine, everything that's going on in our mind and what we see in the empty space is actually reality. And so from that point, it gave me much more confidence to go into healing sessions and create change. And since then, we've seen so many amazing things. I mean, there was a lady, this was shortly after, actually, this is like gone back 8 years, a lady in India, she had a blocked up throat. Like they couldn't get any food into her. They were feeding her intravenously for months. And the doctors had said to her family, listen, we can't just keep her in hospital and keep this going. You know, what are we going to do about this? They wanted to just turn off the machines and just let her pass away. So one of her family members got in contact with me. And so they said, can you help? And I always say yes. I've never got a clue how I'm going to help because Star Magic's a game and there's no system. It's not a healing modality. We go through a very specific process that opens up the field and it's like playing a game. So I went in to play the game and I said to the universe, please show me something I don't know to help me facilitate the healing of this incredible human being. And that's the question we always ask. Please show me something I don't know. I'm not interested in what I know. This is a brand new human I've never worked with before, with a soul that has a set of soul experiences like no other human on planet Earth. So I have to treat them completely differently. So we always say, please show me something I don't know. When I asked the question, I saw a frog. And then I saw a jar and the frog spat some venom into the jar. And then a blue light came down from space. And I was told to mix the venom and the blue light together, get a syringe, suck it out, put it in the back of the lady's hologram and inject it. I did that. The next day, her throat cleared up and she walked out of hospital. I mean, that was an amazing thing. I'll tell you something that was really awesome. And I love telling this story because one thing that I really want to do is bridge allopathic medicine and Western medicine. Allopathic medicine and kind of Eastern medicine, like energy healing and, you know, what they do in the West with pharmaceuticals and stuff, because there is a link and everything has its place in this world. And several years ago, I got a phone call from a lady in England. Her partner was Romanian. They lived in England. And this guy, Stefan, was on his push bike. He was riding it up to a roundabout. And a car came across in front of him and his push bike hit the car and his head went through the quarter light window, that tiny little window at the back. And obviously he got dragged a little bit and he pulled his head back up when the car stopped. His nose was in the back of his brain. All of his head was cut to pieces. His neck was broke. His collarbone was broke. His shoulder was broke. He was just smashed to pieces. Anyway, he got airlifted to Frenchay Hospital in Bristol and he was put in a glass cubicle so that the doctors could monitor him 24/7, 365. And no one was allowed to see him apart from family members. So his partner phones me up and tells me what's happened. So I get in the car, I drive down to Bristol, and I speak a little bit of Romanian, so enough to get by. So I pretended to be his Romanian brother that had just got off a plane. So they let me into the glass cubicle. I'm next to him. He's got tubes in his nose. They cut the top of his head open, pulled his skull forwards, and pushed his nose back out, and then stapled it again. He was stitched up all over his face. He was in a mess. And the devil was sat at the end of his bed. And the devil was trying to coax him into going with him. And when I spoke to Stefan after this, he told me that he'd had that experience with the devil too. And he had to really resist that. So anyway, I'm in the space, I'm doing my work, and I'm probably there for 2 or 3 hours, just really working and creating in the field. It was a really bright, sunny day. I walked to the window once I'd finished my healing, and it was just blue skies. All there was in the sky was one cloud, and the cloud was in the shape of a cross. So anyway, I go back and I said to Steph, and he wasn't awake or anything, but I said, listen, bro, I love you and I'll see you soon. Now, the doctors had said to him, you're going to be in hospital for a year or so. You might not ever get back to full recovery. The next day, he woke up, he pulled all the tubes out of his nose, all the tubes out of his mouth. He starts breathing on his own. They x-ray him again. He's got no broken collarbone, no broken neck. He's got no broken bones in his body. He's completely okay. He was back at work in 5 weeks, and all of the scars on his face healed up really well. You could still see them, but really minor compared to what they should have been.
Wow.
So the reason I'm sharing this is because if it wasn't for the air ambulance, he'd be dead. He'd be dead, 100% guaranteed. And if it wasn't for me going in and doing the work, he wouldn't have. The healing wouldn't have been as good, and it wouldn't have been as fast. So we can work together, and we should be working together. And there is a place for everything. And so, yeah, I would love to see allopathic medicine and energy healing come together in a really strong way to help humanity. I mean, last year we had a lady in Canada get up out of a wheelchair. She hadn't walked for 12 years. We had another lady with multiple sclerosis in Miami, not walked for 5 years, got up out of a wheelchair. These things are happening. We had a lady this year, her eyesight came back in a retreat. We've had people take the hearing aids out. I mean, you name it, I've seen it happen. And like I said at the start, I don't take this stuff for granted. I don't think, oh yeah, just another day at the office. I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. It's happened again. Like it inspires me so much to keep going and try and find new ways to make it even faster and help more people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a constant evolutionary process, and it's never boring. It's always exciting.
Yeah, yeah. I've read your book, Activate Your Superhuman Potential. If people see that book on the website, it looks like a normal size book. It came in the mail. I'm like, oh my God, this thing's like a giant workbook. I mean, the thing is a huge book. I read it cover to cover, and I was fascinated by, you say that Star Magic Healing is not necessarily a methodology, but it's what did you say? A play?
It's like a game. It's like playing a game. Yeah.
In a game. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yet you have some very fascinating methodologies with code, like these numerical and alphanumeric codes that ask people to focus on. And I've been in some of your live experiences where you have us focus on those things. How did you come up with this way of facilitating healing? How did this come to you? And is this something that people could actually, I know you train facilitators, but is it possible to do this on the level that you personally do it?
Okay, I'll answer the second question first. It's the easiest. The short answer is yes, definitely. I mean, we're in California last year, and we had a lady with kyphoscoliosis, which is like an S-shaped spine, but it's also twisted like a corkscrew. She'd had it for years. She was in a lot of pain all the time. And we've got the x-rays before and afterwards. And we had 75, 80 people in the training. And I said, would anyone like to be a volunteer and come up and help me fix this lady's spine? Only one person in the whole training put their hand up. And it was a 10-year-old boy from Hawaii, a young lad called Kahoy, amazing little Jedi. So he comes up to the front. I was lying in front of him on the floor looking up, and another one of our facilitators was drawing what he was seeing on the whiteboard, and he was there with his eyes closed working on this lady. And we're going through this process, and to heal her spine, he had to go into a really deep ancient reality, which was on in the Andromedan galaxy, and actually him and her were in some kind of relationship together, not as a couple, but like a mother and son or something like that. I can't remember exactly. When he went into that reality, he just went unconscious, and I was lying on the floor, and I kind of was right there. I scooped him up and held him in my arms. And I was just waiting for him because I could see what was happening. It was just very deep and intense when the energy came in. And then after about, I don't know, 30 seconds, he opened his eyes, looked at me. I stood him back up and he just continued. Real little warrior. So he worked on this lady for about 40 minutes and her spine went straight. She was crying. She was screaming. He never even touched her. Nobody touched her, and we've got the scans from before and after. We've actually got 100% track record on spinal corrections, doing them remotely through Zoom. So there's not one human being. We've worked with people all over the world, and I've guided so many people to do this. So people look at me and think, oh, Jerry can do this, and I probably can't because Jerry's Jerry. But just remember, I used to sell drugs. I used to be a drug addict. I used to smoke crack cocaine, do ecstasy. I was involved in all of this criminal activity. If I can go and have that shift and come to where I am now, anybody can. So when people come into our training, we've had lots of people in our trainings for Jerry, I can't do this. I'm going home, or blah, blah, blah. They're really pissed off and annoyed because they just can't get it. And I'm like, just breathe, just relax. And there's always a way of just finding how they collect the information from the field and how they change that information to help facilitate healing, which now brings me back to this first question. So back in 2009, I was in New Zealand in my friend's pyramid, in his garden, a copper pyramid, and a little space pod landed. I brought my light out of my body, went and got inside, and we flew through a portal and went to Alpha Centauri. I'd
Okay,
never heard.
hold on. I got to interrupt here. Just so people that are not familiar with this, you're sitting under a copper pyramid. You say a spaceship arrives. You're in the midst of meditation, correct?
So I met this old guy called Michael. He became a very dear friend of mine, and we had this gym at the time. And Michael used to run the marketing for a local rugby team. So he used to come to the gym because the rugby team used to come to the gym. And we used to chat about, esoteric stuff and the universe. And he introduced me to Saint Germain. He said, listen, I speak to this being called Saint Germain. We used to go and sit at lunchtime, get a cup of tea, and we'd talk to Saint Germain for an hour, sometimes 2 hours. We'd go to this place in New Zealand between Napier and Hastings called Tamata Peak. It's a big hill, and it had like two like humps on it, a male and a female, magnetic and electrical. He used to stand on one, I used to stand on the other. And Saint Germain used to guide us on these grid work missions. We used to go into the earth. We used to play with energy. It was amazing. So Michael opened me up a bit more to some of this stuff. And up until this point, I'd never really meditated. And he was saying, Jerry, man, you got to meditate. You got to meditate. And I was like, oh, I don't know whether I want to sit there. It sounds boring to me. So anyway, he had a copper pyramid in his garden. And I used to go and sit in it every day in the afternoon. And he taught me to meditate with my eyes open, not with my eyes closed. So I'd sit in this copper pyramid. I had some amazing experiences. One time I'm in this pyramid and Jesus comes down before me and my feet turn to flames like balls of fire. And I'm looking down and they're literally burning, but they weren't hot, but there was flames. And he looked into my eyes and he said, Jerry, you can walk anywhere you want to go. Don't be scared. No fear. So I'm kind of like nodding. Okay. And he kind of turns and these steps appeared in the garden and he walks up the steps and I followed him and we're in the Last Supper. And I was in the body of Matthew. There's everybody sat around the table. He's given his Last Supper sermon speech. I look out the window and I see this massive extraterrestrial craft. And up until this point, I'd never really had any extraterrestrial encounters or seen any crafts. I'd had one encounter with a reptilian being, which was back in 2004, where I went to a meeting about 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar. But that was a whole different thing. I'd never really sort of seen craft or anything like this, but here in this space, I was seeing this massive craft, and this craft was huge. I don't even know how big it was. It was like, I don't know, because it was out the window and it was a little bit in the distance. It could have been like miles long. It looked huge, like a city. So that what they were doing is showing me that extraterrestrials had been around for a long time. Anyway, I had this kind of Last Supper experience. I get up, I walk back down the steps and get back into my body. Then 2 weeks later, another meditation. This is when the space pod comes and lands in the garden. So this space pod, there's a blue being inside of it. And I brought my light out of my body because I'd met this lady in England, which I was telling you about earlier, who had the past life regression business. She taught me how to bring my light out of my body and go through different dimensional spaces. So I could go out of our matrix back into our matrix. I could come to your house and watch you, asleep at nighttime. Like I could go anywhere out of my body, like just like that, very quickly. So she taught me all this stuff. So when the space pod landed, I knew how to bring my light out of my body and go and get inside it. So I get inside this space pod and it's tiny. Like literally you could fit me and this blue being. The blue being was taller than me. There was no controls in this space pod. And the roof kind of came down in a little bit of a slant. And it was round but pointed at the front. And inside was like crystal. Like it was like it had a dashboard, and the dashboard was like it was alive. And I could sense that the being was controlling the craft with its own consciousness. And what happened is my consciousness, like a part of me, went through this tunnel and to the other side where there was water, like it was ocean and there was a beach. And then what happened is the rest of us and the craft followed through afterwards. So it was like they presented to me where we were going, and then 4 or 5 seconds we were through the portal and out the other side. And now I'm sat in the craft again next to this blue being. And the blue being's name is Derekwai. And Derekwai has been with me ever since and has been kind of guiding me and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, we're in this space pod. I get out, I walk up the beach, and there's about 200 of these blue beings. And they're all of them are much taller than me, 6.5, 7 foot, some of them even taller. They've got no clothes on. They've got no sex. They're androgynous. All of them have got like 6-packs or 8-packs. It was like they're all just really fit and healthy. And they hugged me. And the love that I felt was like a level of love that I just never, ever experienced before. And it felt like I was home. It felt like they were my family and that I'd arrived back where I belong. So they hugged me for I don't know how long. And then they stopped hugging me. And they kind of parted this kind of like clearing. And one of them led me up the beach through these trees. It was like jungle. And there was a building, a pyramid made of light. And they took me into this pyramid. And there's a being there, like a blue being. And it felt ancient, like thousands of years old. Imagine you went to a Native American reservation and you met like a native elder. You know this being was older and wiser than all the others, even if its skin complexion might have looked young. And the skin complexion of this being looked flawless, even though you could tell the depth. It might have been 1,000 years old, a few hundred years. I'm not sure. But the being asked me to kneel down on the floor. And then all of this orange light started pouring down into my crown. And it was full of this geometrical code. And it wasn't like the geometry that you get in the textbooks here on planet Earth. It was like these spirals of code. And it was going down into me. And then it stopped. Now, this might have lasted for a minute. It might have lasted for 5 hours. I just do not know how long I was there. And then 2 beings picked me up underneath my arms and they frog marched me back to the space pod. They stick me back inside. We go back through the portal and land back in the garden. I get out of the space pod. I go back and sit back in my physical body. And then nothing else happened in my life for 2 years. Imagine I've had that experience. I'm thinking, what's next? I'm waking up every single day, like so excited, thinking something else is coming, but nothing was coming. I'm meditating. I'm asking, nothing.
What were you doing for work at the time? Were you doing healing work?
No, we had we'd set up a gym.
Okay,
It was a mixed martial arts gym, a strength and conditioning facility. We were training basketball players, rugby players, MMA fighters, Muay Thai fighters, wrestlers, jiu-jitsu fighters. Yeah, but like mostly people in the fight game, but also other people in any kind of strength and power sports.
Mhm.
So they were coming in, and also we were doing a lot of work for like the local Maori community, because there was a massive problem with diabetes. So we were getting a lot of people that were overweight, changing their nutrition and working with them. I was going on national TV doing exercise programs at 9 a.m. in the morning on like Good Morning TV and stuff. Like everything was going really, really well. And so and I was still doing my meditation. I was still kind of getting, a few downloads here and there. I was still practicing healing on people, but it wasn't my thing. It wasn't my everything, It was just something that I was just doing in the background. And I was still with Michael, speaking to Saint Germain and all this sort of stuff. So about 2 years go past. And then one day I wake up and I just knew that we had to go back to England. And so the kids and my ex-missus are like, Jerry, you're nuts. Everything's going so well. There's no way we're going back to England. So I had to like pester them for a couple of weeks. I was like driving them around the bend, like, we've just got to go back. We've got to go back. So in the end, we put a manager in charge of the gym, put our stuff into storage, and just got some one-way tickets back to England. I put the kids into school, just quickly realized that was no good. It was like a prison. So we pulled them out of school. And one morning, I'm out running and I see these fairies fly around a tree. So I stop and I'm looking at these fairies, and then an angel comes down. He says, my name's Archangel Gabriel. You need to write a book. I said, well, what's the book called? He said, it's called Into the Light, Raising the Global Vibration. It's about your life story up until sort of 2012. So I went home, I wrote the book. It took me about 4 weeks. I published it. As soon as I published it, I start seeing all of this geometrical code, all of this mathematics. Like right now, I'm looking at you through my laptop. You're in another country. I'm in Jamaica. But I see all of this code in between us. And ever since this time, I've seen this code. And so I'm saying to my guides, what am I supposed to do with this geometry? They said, you need to meditate more. You're being lazy. So I started getting up every morning at 5 o'clock with my son, Josh, and we would go into these ancient mystery schools underneath the pyramids in Egypt in our meditation. And there was a being there with these scrolls. And on the scrolls were the same codes I was seeing in the space, the same codes that I got on the orange download. And we went for 2 hours every day for 9 months. And they were showing us how to heal people with the codes. So that's when people started coming into my life that needed healing. And then reverting back to what I was saying to you earlier about going to that Mind Body Spirit Festival and doing those 70 to 80 healings for people, I was using the codes and practicing with them. So what I was being shown is that we are biological computers, and we have data streams running into us from past lives, future lives, present day life experiences, which are not really past, future, and present day life experiences. They're just experiences in the field, because once you get out of your body, there is no future, there is no past. There's just now. But we're multi-dimensional beings. So our soul has had or is having, depending on how you perceive it, experiences on this planet, other planets, other galaxies, other solar systems, other multiverses, all at the same time in the same space. Some are positive, some are not so positive. But these experiences are literally computer code. So what I'm able to do is to track the information stream back to the parallel reality where it took place or is still taking place, and see it as a piece of code, and then change that code. Once I change the code in the back end of the biological computer, the body and brain, then the physical symptom disappears or heals on the front end. So we're literally like computer programmers. So we go in holographically, change things in the field, and boom, the person heals. And really, what I always say to people is this: I cannot heal you, and I've never healed anyone. And that's actually the truth. But what we do is create an environment so the body can self-heal. So by us going and changing the code in the back end of the biological computer, it changes the code on the front end. As above, so below, as within, so without. Okay. If it happens in one space, it happens in another space. So as I do it in the field, it changes in the physical body, the mental, emotional, and energetic bodies. And then the body can do what it does best. And that is self-heal, because the body should not be ill. But at school, what we should be doing is teaching our children how to read their own bodies and how to self-heal. If we knew how to read our own bodies, we would never get ill, because the body is a highly advanced communication device. The neck, it's all about stubbornness. The hips are about direction. The liver stores anger and guilt. Like every single body part means something. So when you know how to read the body, you've got your starting point into the field to access the piece of code in another reality field to change it and create healing.
Mhm.
But what happens is people don't know how to do that. So they come to people like me or one of our facilitators and we do it for them. But everybody has this capability.
So I'm curious about plant medicine, because I do know that you do quite a few retreats that involve plant medicine, whether it's ayahuasca or psilocybin. How much does plant medicine accelerate or open the possibility of having this ability, or even helping with healing process? Could you speak to that?
Plant medicine is amazing. And plant medicine can cut through so much rubbish. So something that might take, if someone goes to a psychologist, some kind of body coach, massage therapist, some kind of mind trauma therapist, even if they went to some kind of like Reiki healer or quantum healer, often the healing process, it can be 4, 5, 6 sessions, 10 sessions. When you use something like plant medicine or you use something like star magic, one session and you can cut through lifetimes of bullshit. Star magic goes straight to the computer code. Ayahuasca, psilocybin goes straight through the logicalness and into that computer code. So whether you're using plant medicine or you're using star magic, you can cut through 10, 15, 20 years or lifetimes of stuff in 1 hour, in 10 minutes, in one night. Just depends. Everybody's a little bit different, but it speeds things up rapidly. Now, what I would say about plant medicine is you need to make sure you're doing it with someone that really understands what's going on. The lower vibrational forces, interdimensional entities, what some people might call the dark side of the force, they're using plant medicine to worm their way into the consciousnesses and the fields of some humans. So plant medicine is readily available now. You used to have to go to the jungle and have to go and see a shaman that had been brewing it for 30, 40 years, 20 years, whatever it was, that came from some kind of long lineage of shamans. And it was very safe. And people were in safe hands and knew that they were going to be looked after. Now, with that being said, even in those shamanistic communities, deep in the jungle, there are still some shamans that are infiltrated by dark spirits, interdimensional entities, and they are sexually abusing men and women in ceremonies without having to touch them. They can do it energetically. Some of them don't even know they're doing it. But a lot of them have kind of been infiltrated by these kind of lower frequency entities, and they're using the shamans as a host to get stuck into other people and use the humans that go into their ceremonies to then become hosts for these spirits and go back out into the world and spread like a virus and use the human beings as the food source. So going to a really good shaman is important. And a lot of the ones you'll find in the jungle are good, but you really need to go to someone that is good and not someone that you hope is good. You've got to really know where these people come from. You've got to do your research. Now, as well, you have plant medicine that's readily available. You can go to Europe, you can go to Portugal, you can go to England, you can go to America, you can go to all different countries around the world, Germany, France, and you can get involved in a 1, 2, 3, 4 day, 5 day ayahuasca retreat. in someone's hotel room or apartment block. It's extremely unsafe. And the people that are running these ceremonies really don't know what they're doing. It's just a money-making exercise for them. So they're bringing people into an environment, opening up their fields. It's not a safe space. It's not a safe container. And people are ending up in a mess. It's not cool. I first went to the jungle to do medicine, and I worked with an incredible medicine woman from Venezuela, who had set up an incredible space in Brazil. And I went to her for 11 days, did medicine. I've worked with other shamans from Peru, from Brazil, in many medicine ceremonies. And I've learned so much. I've remembered so much. And what we do is we merge medicine with star magic. So what I feel is we're bringing a much higher frequency through the medicine and working in a much more efficient way than a lot of these traditional shamans. And a lot of people would say to me, Jerry, yeah, that's not really the right thing to say. How can you say that what you're doing is better than these shamans? I'm not saying what we're doing is better. I'm saying what we're doing is different. We do bring a more galactic frequency through the medicine. And I was actually shown by Aya, by Mother Aya herself, when we used to drink ayahuasca on other planets. And we used to drink it in a kind of a liquid blue plasma format. Okay. It was a medicine, same kind of experience where it would do things to you and open you up and in ways that it does here on planet Earth, but we just did it on other planets. We did it in sacred ceremony, in groups, in special environments, but it was no different from what we do here on Earth. And what we're doing is we're bringing that galactic element through the medicine into our sisters and brothers that come to our ceremonies. When you go to a lot of traditional ceremonies, they get you to lie down on the bed and you're not really allowed to interact with people and move around. With us, it's very free. We allow people just to do whatever they need to do in the ceremony space to create whatever healing they need to create. And we guide them. We do meditation, breath work. We do star magic on them. We'll remove interdimensional entities. It's completely different from a traditional ceremony. Even though we're using traditional medicine, we're using it in a much more galactic fashion. And the results that we get are much more powerful, much more powerful. We've had people that have come to our ayahuasca deep in space retreats that have been to over 100 ceremonies in the jungle. And they say that what we do is much faster, much more efficient. And they say it's a much safer container too.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about a couple of things that you are now offering, and whether somebody's listening to this even after this experience happens. You probably will do it again or have replays or so forth. And there's an event coming up around the Cosmic Grandfathers. How were you introduced to the Cosmic Grandfathers? Tell me about this event that's happening over the course of 3 weekends.
Okay. So in June this year, it was the 1st of June, I was introduced to a being whose name was Moro, or whose name is Moro. And he's one of the cosmic grandfathers. And there's a number of these cosmic grandfathers. And the reason the 1st of June is important is because on the 1st of July, we started a new workshop called Savage Man, where we brought a bunch of beautiful men into a sacred space. And we went through a 13-day process where we broke them down mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, rebuilt them, and then did plant medicine at the end as the icing on the cake. So we taught them how to fight. They were sparring, they were boxing. We did breath work. We did circuit training. We did deep meditation work, deep emotional work. Like we broke them down in every which way possible and then rebuilt them. And we ignited that savage man, that lion inside all of them, but in a very balanced way. And the reason, there's 2 reasons the grandfathers came to see me. One, because there was information that I was missing that I needed to share in the Savage Man workshop. And number 2, because they wanted me to go on a grid work mission around the planet and activate what they called the solar clock. So they told me there were 15 locations. And I had to buy crystals. I had to buy 2 types of crystals, these Unikite dragon eggs and these clear pointed, these two pointed clear quartz crystals. So I bought 15 of each. And I was told I had to go to these 15 locations, bury the crystals, and activate them in a very specific way. So I got a map of the world. I drew the 15 points on the map, and I joined them all together, and it created the perfect dragon's wing. And I was blown away. And they told me this is the new seventh dimensional architecture that's going to hold the new divine mother, divine feminine frequency coming to planet Earth. So me and my girlfriend and Cherie, our video editor, Laurie's my girlfriend, the three of us, we jumped on a plane. First of all, we went to Romania. Then we went to France. We went to Bosnia. We went to Tibet, Syria, Russia, Ethiopia, Easter Island, Peru. We went all over the planet. We ended up in Skellig Island in Ireland. So we went to these 15 locations, buried these crystals. We did 120 something thousand air miles in 4.5 weeks. It was a crazy trip. But we buried these crystals. And I mean, I could talk to you for hours about what happened at each of these locations. It was amazing, but probably save that for another podcast. But we created this dragon's wing. And when we got back to England, they told me that I needed to host a Zoom call with 500 people. So we got 500 people on a Zoom call, and we went through this activation. We had to get this dragon's wing, like energetically, it was all activated. There was frequency running through the planet. We had to lift that dragon's wing out from the planet, expand it, take it into space, and we had to get multiple different grid points, multiple different systems, and rotate them at 45-degree spins, lay them over each other, and then lay this dragon's wing grid over this huge kind of piece of architecture, which had billions of planets and stargates and all of this kind of multi-dimensional stuff. And when we laid it down, the dragon's wing fitted perfectly over a very specific set of stargates, planets, and systems. Now, once we laid that down, we went through a very specific process to activate it, and the whole thing lit up. And then it started to twist, and it started to rotate. And what we were told is over the next 5 to 10 years, this solar clock is going to compress space-time, taking the energy from all of these different planets and suns and stars, and compressing it down and down and down. Once it gets to its convergence point, that's what they called it, there's going to be an explosion. And a huge wave of energy is going to sweep not just through Earth, but through all the planets in our galaxy and beyond. And there's going to be a huge DNA upgrade. Okay. And all humanity on planet Earth at the same time is going to be upgraded at once. So this meeting these grandfathers, there's 8 of them. Each one of them represents a multidimensional time matrix, which is 15 dimensions plus another 6, which there's 15 dimensions inside the matrix and 15 dimensions outside the matrix, but it all makes up what makes up one matrix. And each of these grandfathers represents one of those. So you can imagine there's thousands and millions of galaxies and billions of planets and stars all in one being. Like when Moro came through the wall of my house, his head was as big as a car. His body's like 70 meters tall. And I jumped, and he's like a bluey, diamondy, like pearly color, like bright orange hair and a bright orange beard. And he came right up into my space. And so he's been teaching me. He took me up to the realm of the grandfathers. They've been sharing all of this ancient wisdom with me and really teaching me about how the grandfathers have to hold space for the divine mother, because the divine father isn't mature enough to hold space for the divine mother. So what we have to do as men is we have to embody this grandfather frequency, and that grandfather frequency can really hold space for the feminine as we go through this ascension process. So right now, at the moment, I'm in Jamaica. Last week, I was on a cruise through Belize and South America. 2 weeks before that, I was in Hong Kong. When I was in Hong Kong, I started to lay the tail for the dragon. Last week in Belize and this week in Jamaica, we're laying the head. Next week, I'm going to be in Dominican Republic laying more of the heads. And then we're going back to New Zealand in like April time to do the rest of the tail. And then we're just waiting to get the other dragon's wing, find out where that's going to be on the planet, and go and lay that some point this year. So the whole dragon will be completed. And it's a crystalline grid, an amazing seventh dimensional piece of architecture. And the grandfathers and the dragons have been working with me to help facilitate the process. When you're doing a lot of this grid work, you can often do it remotely, but sometimes you need to go to a physical location and anchor crystals into the ground because there has to be a physical anchor point. And with this particular piece of architecture, it's been needed. So I've been working with the grandfathers to facilitate this. And these beings are amazing. In January, we're starting a workshop, an online workshop over 6 days to introduce the grandfathers to humanity, all 8 of them. Yeah.
All right. So we'll obviously put a link to that event in the show notes. It begins January 11th over the course of 3 weekends. You also mentioned that your facilitator training is now 100%. They can become in person or via Zoom, but you also have it on demand where people can just access how to become a Star Magic facilitator, Star Magic Healing facilitator online. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, we've always ran several trainings every year, our level 1 trainings. We do level 2 and level 3 trainings and our Jedi training too. But the level 1 is like the entry point. And so people were having to wait a couple of months for the next one. So what we did is we created the level 1 training as a digital product, which enables anyone now to go and get access to it 24/7, 365. So when you go and buy the digital product, you can go through 5 days of training. There's 2 bonus days of training. You've got all the Jedi codes in one of those bonus days, which are incredible. There's also a support program afterwards, once you've been through it, where we meet you twice a month online. One where we answer any questions that you've got on anything that you've been doing with your practice sessions. And then another day where we meet online just to practice. So you can practice all of the techniques, all of the ways, all of the codes. So you can just get more and more proficient and more able to use Star Magic and facilitate incredible healing sessions like me and the rest of the beautiful souls that have been through the training. So yeah, it's just making it really accessible for everybody. And since we've done that, we've had so many people go through the training and people love it because the other thing as well, if you go through the training with me, it's pretty intense because you're working from 9 in the morning till late in the evening, 7 days in a row. When you go through it on your own, you could stop it for a bit, you could start it. So you can go through it at a more gentle pace. And yeah, it's a bit more kind of manageable because this training is 5 days plus 2 bonus days, but we could extend this training over a month and people would still think it was well worth it. It's just jam packed full of goodness. So we always over deliver. So if anyone's interested in remembering Star Magic, not learning Star Magic, because we've all got this stuff inside of us. If you're interested in remembering it, go to starmagichealing.org and go and check it out.
Talk to me about Conscious Life Expo. You're going to be there February again this year. How are you going to be involved? Are you going to be speaking?
Yeah, so I'm going to be running a couple of free workshops, one 90-minute workshop. I'm going to be running a 45-minute lecture. And I can't actually remember what they're on right now, which is kind of bad of me, but there's so much going on. But if you go to the Conscious Life Expo website, you'll be able to see what I'm doing. But I'm doing 2 talks. One will be an activation, one will be a talk. And then I'm speaking on a panel on the Sunday. And then on the Monday, I'm doing a post-conference workshop, which will be a paid workshop in the afternoon for 2 hours. Yeah, I'll also be doing one-on-one healing sessions, like taster sessions, 15-minute healing sessions, which is all you really need. Magic can happen in 5 minutes. So 15 minutes is a lifetime. So if you're interested in working with me in person, one-on-one, which is a rarity these days, then, you can go to starmagichealing.org, book a session, and, I can see you there. Or if you're interested in coming to one of the workshops, just come along. I look forward to giving you a hug. The Conscious Life Expo is awesome. We've been going there since 2017. It's a great place to meet people, to network, to just see what's going on in the spiritual community.
So we'll put a link, obviously, to consciouslifeexpo.com in the show notes. And if people want to get involved, as you mentioned, starmagichealing.org. On Instagram, it's Sargeant Jerry. So yeah, man, amazing. Thank you so much. We could talk for hours about all of these. Thank you for sharing your story, your heart, your wisdom, your It's just amazing what you're doing. Really appreciate how you're making a difference in the world. And your heart is big, your mind is enormous, and encourage people to dive in. You offer so much, especially one of the things we didn't even mention is you have an app that people can join and get access to so many of these resources. Tell them about that real quick.
So we have an app called Infinity. We've been running it for 7 years now. You can download on Apple, you can download on Android. Inside Infinity, you've got hundreds of guided meditations, hundreds of music only meditations. You've got medicine journey meditations. You've got everything you need. You've got light language transmissions that you can listen to, light codes that you can stare at whilst you're listening to the light language transmissions. There's nutrition, uh, exercise, breath work. You've got mystery school teachings on hundreds of different topics, everything Ascension. If you want to raise your vibration, these mystery school teachings are amazing. We meet every Monday and Wednesday for the frequency spa, for weekly meditations, DNA activations. We meet every second Sunday for Fearless Focus, where we set challenges and protocols and plans for the 2 weeks to hold you accountable so you can live the Star Magic lifestyle and keep raising your vibration. We've got an amazing community in school where you can just speak to beautiful souls just like you. We've got community managers. You know, when you join Infinity, you can book a free Star Buddy call, and one of our Star Buddies will show you Infinity, how to navigate it, how to get the best out of it. Like, if you want to raise your vibration and become a superhuman and like navigate this ascension process, Infinity is where it's at. It's got all the tools. You don't need to go anywhere else. It's amazing. So yeah, go and check it out. And it's free for 7 days. So you can, indulge in all of it to see what you think of it first before you spend a dollar, a dime, a euro.
Awesome. StarMagicHealing.org. And of course, we'll see you at Conscious Life Expo. So, Jerry, thanks so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, David. Massive love, Star Brother. Thank you.